Hello, everyone. Anita here with you. And I just wanted to take a few minutes and walk you through our assignment for this week. Really because I want to give you a little bit of context and framing around the Marshall rubrics and how we might use the Marshall rubrics to help guide us in the way that we give formative feedback in addition to evaluative feedback to teachers. So let me go ahead and share my screen. It may take me a moment, so thank you for your patience. So hopefully you'll be able to see the Blackboard assignment. And again, this is from my view, so it might look a little bit differently than what it looks on your screen, but I think it will be pretty similar. So for this assignment, there are kind of 7 steps that I'm guiding you through. You sort of see that here. One of them is encouraging you to become familiar with the Marshall rubrics. And I'm going to take you in a moment. I'm going to click on one of the tabs that I already have open for those teacher rubrics for Marshall. And then we're going to think about how we might be able to use observation tools as we're watching a practice video in order to get a sense of that alignment process, kind of that dance between what we're observing and the rubric, and how we might help to use that as a way to guide our feedback conversation as we move along. All right, so these are the Kim Marshall's teacher evaluation rubrics. Again, you can find them in the appendix of our Common Read, the Rethinking Teacher Supervision and Evaluation, but they're also here for you, and I've attached them to the assignment. So last week with the INTAS standards, you'll remember that those standards were divided. There were 4 big categories that the 10 individual standards were kind of lumped into. So the first 3 were in that learner category, the learner and learning differences. And then we looked at content. There were 2 categories, or 2 of the standards that were around content and sort of the application of content. And then 3 standards that were really around this idea of instruction. So kind of planning, and then what instructional strategies and assessment strategies. And then the last 2 were around these legal responsibilities and professionalism. So those were kind of the 4 categories that the 10 standards found themselves in. Now in Marshall's rubrics, he divides his understanding of the answer to the question, what does good teaching look like? He divides it into 6 domains. And so those domains are lettered. And so A is planning and preparation for learning, B is classroom management, C is delivery of instruction, D is monitoring, assessment, and follow-up, E is family and community outreach, and F is professional responsibilities. So those are the 6 domains. And within the domains, he has a number of elements that he uses to further break those domains down. So we're going to look at that in just a moment. Well, let's do it now, for instance. So with A, planning and preparation for learning. So that's one of the big domains. And then you'll notice that he has, with his rubrics, he has them broken down into knowledge, standards, units, assessments, anticipation, lessons, engagement, materials, differentiation, and environment. So those are the elements, or the, if we kind of think about the indicators that make up this larger category around planning and preparation for learning. And then he has 4 levels of performance that he has articulated for each of those elements within. So for knowledge, 4 possible performance elements, and for each of those rows. And then at the bottom of each domain is an opportunity for overall rating and comments. So there are a couple of ways that you are encouraged to kind of think about Marshall's rubrics. You could think about, okay, I'm going to go into a classroom and the teacher has already done a self-assessment. So they've thought about their practice and the evidence of their practice, and they've taken these rubrics and they've sort of highlighted, I think I'm here, I think I'm here, this is where I would rate myself, here's work that I need to do. So they might have already done that self-assessment, and they might already have ideas where they're saying, you know what, here are the 2 or 3 goals that I have that I think I really need to work on. Or when you come in to observe me, I really would like for feedback around planning and preparation for learning, because that's an area that I'm really working on. Okay, or it might be around classroom management, or it might be the family and community outreach portions, whatever it is. So that's one way, is that teachers would be self-assessing along the way and thinking about their evidence and working towards goals. And it might help them to customize or personalize the kinds of things that I'm observing and the way that our feedback dialogue might go. Okay, so I might personalize it in that way. Other times I might be going in and I'm really just trying to get a global sense of what's going on here. So I'm going in to observe, doing multiple mini observations to kind of see where a teacher is at with regards to that. Sometimes we might be working as a school district or as a team or a PLC of teachers on a particular domain. And so when I go in, I've agreed that it's not gonna, like I'm gonna ignore everything else, but I'm gonna give special attention to the domain, say in instance, planning and preparation. So I'm gonna scroll without trying to make you too seasick here so that you can look at the rest of the domains. So classroom management, you'll see, is broken down into expectations, relationships, respect, social, emotional, routines, responsibility, repertoire, efficiency, prevention, and incentives. So one of the things that I hope you're seeing right away is like, whoa, that's a lot to be rating or scoring or thinking about for each of these domains, let alone all 6 of them. And one of the things that I will point out to you is that as you start to move beyond those in-task standards, which there's a lot to those too when you start delving in, but when you start to move into these frameworks, you're going to notice that they get complex pretty quickly. Okay, so there are about, with the 6 categories or 6 domains for Marshall and about 10 of the elements within, there are about 60 pieces that you would be looking for overall that make up the answer to that question, what is good or effective teaching look like? So again, that's a lot to wrap around. So I encourage you to take time with the rubrics to really get a feel for what Marshall is thinking about when he is thinking, okay, so how do I supervise teachers in order to help them improve their practice? What's important? And then, you know, how will I evaluate them in a meaningful kind of way? So what I've done is there are a couple of tools that I just want to share with you. So one of them is this tool here that is on the screen. And I use a common format that I use is this idea of a next step rubric or a single point rubric, where I have the criteria that I'm looking for down the middle, and then an area to the left and to the right where there are areas for either, you know, things that I want you to consider, so questions or concerns, or, you know, that I might have relative to that particular criteria. And then on the other side, it would be areas of note or praise. I want to know, like, wow, you know, I really noticed the way that you were activating students' prior knowledge and how you hooked their attention. And I want to make sure that I document that for you and give you that, you know, pat on the back or have that conversation with you. So in this particular form, observation form that's related to Marshall's rubrics, I have the teacher, you know, the course, so what class is this, the date, a brief description of the content, any learning targets. And then I've identified 4 of the elements from his rubrics that this particular teacher and I have agreed that we're going to work on. So when I come in to observe, I'm going to give them feedback on areas of delivery of instruction, and there are 3 of those that you'll see here. So letter C, D, C, E, and CF, and then 1 element for monitoring, assessment, and follow-up, and that's on the spot, so frequent checks. So here's an example of an observation tool that doesn't have a rating or a score, and it's really customized or tailored to the work that we might be doing with an individual teacher, or maybe a team of teachers, or maybe it's something across the board as a school that we're working on based on the professional development or learning or new programs or instructional strategies that we have been paying attention to. Another form, which will look similar to you as that last one, is again the same sort of heading, the teacher course, brief description, learning targets. And then this is what I've done is I've taken from domain A, planning and preparing for learning, I've taken all of those elements, those criteria, so what we would be looking for, and I placed them right down the middle. So you can see those 2 pages. And then there's placed to the left where there are stars, so areas of strength that I might notice relative to any of those elements. And then an area to the right, which is that next steps, an area to consider or improve. So this is just an example, and I have these for each of the Marshall domains, but I'm just sharing with you one of those domains, planning and preparing, for you to get a sense of how you might use a tool like a next step rubric, which is focusing your attention and the teacher's attention on that criteria that we've established, and then it's narrative bulleted or little pieces of observational data that's going to help guide our conversation around what we're observing, around their planning and preparing for learning. All right, let's look at a couple of other tools real quickly. Well, actually, let's look at another one that I have here down that I have put in your, or uploaded into the assignment folder. This is the one that I was talking about. That is it has the 4 different prompts, if you will, one around content, one around alignment to standards, another around instructional or assessment strategies, and then the 4th around impact. So being able to say, as a result of the content addressed using the instructional strategies being used, here's the impact that I'm noticing, either from exit slips or from, scooching down beside students and talking to them, or what I'm noticing from their writing or a quiz or their progress on a project so far. Okay, so this particular tool, I think, is harder to use when you don't have the opportunity to physically be in the classroom and be able to really scooch down besides kids, have conversation, or look at artifacts or evidence of their learning. But I do want you to be able to see tools like this that really are designed not just about collecting the data, but about encouraging the feedback conversation to move towards, so what's the impact on student learning? All right, I'm going to just head back here to the assignment rubric. So, not to the assignment rubric, sorry, but to the assignment itself, and be able to say, okay, so once you spend a little bit of time around the Marshall rubrics and becoming familiar with those, sort of digesting what's in it, what's left out, what are you noticing, what's your initial gut telling you about what you like or not like, And, you know, don't stick with your gut for too long, because really all of these standards of practices and tools take some practice for you to be able to say, oh, that's where the clear benefits are. Here's the challenges or deficiencies of it. So be careful about that gut of yours. So you're going to spend time getting to know the Marshall rubrics. You're going to spend a little bit of time looking at some of those tools and thinking about which one of those tools might you want to try for this assignment. And then you're going to choose one of the video options. And Mallory from our class sent an example. So thank you, Mallory. So this is Mrs. O. She sent an example of a video of her doing distance learning. So she's teaching first graders the revision process. So you have an opportunity to choose that video or one of the many others that I have curated for you. And I want to encourage you to make sure that you're choosing a video that you didn't use for this past week's assignment. And I also want to encourage you to take this opportunity to really, you know, maybe observe in a content area, a grade level, or a grade span that you wouldn't have been able to do if we were limited to the wing or the school or the time frame that you could have popped into a colleague's classroom for 15 or 20 minutes. So it's a great opportunity to really push yourself out of your comfort zone to be able to observe in a content area or grade level unfamiliar to you. And so once you've had the opportunity to observe using one of the tools, then you're going to do that dance where you're going to look back at the Marshall rubrics and say, okay, based on what I saw, what are the connections? So if you use the praise, probe, and polish form, you'll do that parenthetical again. If you used that content alignment strategy impact form, the same parenthetical. If you use one of the two tools that I gave you already connected with Marshall, well, that alignment is done for you. But I encourage you to then say, but what else did I see beyond the planning and preparation, or beyond these 4 elements that Anita picked out? What else did I see, and how would those align to the Marshall rubrics? And then it's really to think about everything that you have read and viewed about feedback, all of the postings that will be on the discussion board, your own experiences around feedback, and for you to think about, if you had the opportunity to sit with that teacher and really have a meaningful feedback conversation or conference, what would that look like? What questions or prompts would you pose? What would you want to have a conversation? Where would you hope that conversation would go? Okay, and then you're going to write a 2 to 3 page summary of your experience with this practice mini observation video. Okay, so you're practicing mini observation, aligning it to the Marshall rubrics, and really thinking about upping your game with effective feedback. Nothing beats the real thing, baby. But this is as close as we have. So I want to encourage you, even though during this course we're not going to be able to get into classrooms like we would like to, that you can make sure that you are practicing with as many videos as possible, and then push yourself beyond this course when you have the opportunity to get into classrooms, to make sure that you're trying out these different tools, these feedback prompts and conversations, and these alignment protocols to see what it looks like when you're in the same room, in the same space, face to face with another teacher or with a group of students that are not your own. All right, so I hope you have a wonderful time being able to really think about getting even better than you already are at observing and engaging others in feedback conversations. It's such an important part of teacher development. And for those of you like me who follow Dr. Hattie's work or some of the evidence-based research, we know that one of the strongest strategies that you can use as a leader is to observe teachers teaching and engage with them in conversations. It is a 0.91 for an effect size. A 0.4 is kind of that average, that hinge that we're looking for. In large scale numbers, it gets you about a year's worth of growth. So a 0.91, if you can become effective at classroom observations that are formative in nature, combined with feedback conversations, you can really start to have incredible impact on not only improving teacher practice, but improving student learning. And another piece is creating the structures for teachers to be able to build that trust with one another and to be able to get into each other's classrooms and give each other meaningful feedback that they can put into action and take their next steps. So enjoy this assignment, get as much out of it as you can.